7 years after the fall and erasure of the floating city of Columbia.
In 1919, in an alternate reality, a young boy by the name of Andrei Ryanovsky fled the Russian Empire to start a new life in America, later changing his name to Andrew Ryan. By 1930, his experiences in the workers' paradise had made him despise the ideals of socialism and collectivism, as he believed that those who benefited undeservedly from others were parasites, and began to believe that one could only own what one earned. In 1945, the United States detonated 2 nuclear weapons over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ryan saw this as the ultimate corruption of his ideals, science and determination harnessed for destruction, creating a weapon that gave the parasites the ability to destroy anything that they could not seize. He decided to use his entire fortune to build a community where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, and where the great would not be constrained by the small, in the only place he felt that the parasites could not touch, the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. He called this place Rapture.
To create his vision, he hired Irish brothers and architects, Simon and Daniel Wales, to design the city.
Ryan and his associates secured manufacturing materials in secret to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Using his own private steamliner, the Olympian, he transported building supplies to the coordinates where the city would be built, located between Greenland and Iceland. Deep-sea welders and mechanics created a foundation for the city by sinking pilings and girders deep into the rock and silt. Prefabricated buildings with frames of aluminium were assembled near the surface, submerged and then lowered. Upon hearing upon a wealthy building project, Frank Gorland, a resourceful criminal, looked to con some money. Discovering that a smuggler named Frank Fontaine, owner of Fontaine Fisheries, was supplying the workers with fish, he met with the owner and killed him, taking his identity of Frank Fontaine and running his business. Upon learning more information about Rapture, he wrote letters to Andrew Ryan, claiming to admire his ideals, and asked to set up his fishing business in Rapture. By November 5th, 1946, Rapture had begun receiving its first residents as the infrastructure had built up enough to be habitable for a large population, bringing in the best and brightest that Andrew could find. As people came in, the city continued to grow. 2 years later, Ryan accepts Fontaine's request to come to the city. Fontaine sets up a fishing dock in Port Neptune, which becomes his front for a smuggling operation. While walking through the fishing dock, Brigid Tenebaum, a geneticist, observed the results of a sea slug's venom upon an injured hand of a worker at the dock. She discovered that the sea slug produced a substance that could heal damaged cells and resurrect them. Brigid called this substance Adam. She went to Fontaine with a proposal that he could fund research on the slugs, and he quickly saw the business opportunities of the endeavour. Finding that Adam had the ability to manipulate DNA and effectively give people superpowers, Fontaine set up an Adam business, Fontaine Futuristics, employing Tenebaum and another geneticist, Dr. Suchong, to research and develop plasmids and gene tonics, domestic aids that could give a person the ability to start a fire instantly and pick up objects from a distance. They soon discovered that the sea slugs did not naturally produce a large enough Adam quantity for serious research and commercial exploitation. Dr. Tenebaum develops a procedure whereby a sea slug is implanted into a human host stomach, finding that a symbiotic interaction between host and slug yielded up to 30 times the quantity of usable Adam. Female children were found to be the only viable host, and so, Tenebaum informed Fontaine that they required little girls to mass produce Adam. Further research of Adam showed that it had a rather serious downside of causing gradual cosmetic changes and mental deterioration for those who use it habitually.
A random quality of recycled Adam was that it sometimes gave the user the ability to see memories of the previous user.
To maintain the city, Dr. Suchong created genetically enhanced human beings who had had their skins and organs grafted into an enormous diving suit to serve as Rapture's maintenance workers. To help in later construction projects, and to do the menial work of Rapture that was not profitable. Rosie's riveted panels and windows, while bouncers drilled deep-sea rocks for expansion of the city. In 1949, a tear opens and the last Zachary Hill Comstock across all realities steps through. On his hand, the tattooed initials AD. In his reality, Anna's head, rather than her pinky finger, was severed by the closing Lutece tear, killing her. Overwhelmed by horror and guilt, the Lutece sent him through time and space to start over and forget his guilt. Stepping through the tear had also altered his memories, and so he reverted back to his original name, Booker DeWitt, and became a private detective in Rapture. In 1950, Fontaine creates the Little Sister Orphanage, a charity where parents could willingly give up their children, although Fontaine used this as a front to use little girls to generate Adam. Ryan later invited Dr. Sophia Lamb, a psychologist, to Rapture to help citizens cope with underwater life. However, Lamb started to use the therapy sessions as a means to brainwash her patients into joining a cult, the core belief being that every citizen of Rapture owes each other a sense of unity and brotherhood, a stark contrast to Andrew Ryan's philosophy. The people of the cult strive to be released from the self, and be reborn as a selfless being in service of the family. After 6 years of construction, the city of Rapture is completed in 1951. Andrew Ryan then cuts off contact with the surface world. After the birth of Sophia's daughter, Eleanor, she made certain that Eleanor would be the perfect vessel to continue furthering her goals. She attempted to keep her daughter isolated from other children, and privately tutored her, hoping to raise a genius-level intellect. With their work now complete, the Wales brothers moved to Siren Alley. Due to Rapture being under the ocean, some areas started leaking. Convinced that he had not done his job correctly, filled with guilt, Simon began receiving counselling from Sophia Lamb. Here, he became exposed to her philosophy of altruism and adopted the name Father Wales, preaching Lamb's collectivist ideals. With Rapture booming with intellectual minds, Brigid Tenebaum, Sander Cohen, Gil Alexander, Andrew Ryan, Sophia Lamb and Dr. Suchong were placed on a poster as Rapture's best and brightest. These great minds would shape the future of Rapture. With all of the new technology that Rapture had to offer, Charles Milton Porter and his associate, Reed Wall, created Rapture Central Computing, a company in charge of the regulation and safety of Rapture's automated systems. At the centre of this, the Thinker, an artificial intelligence that could perform all of the calculation needs of the city. Soon, the Adam culture had taken a hold of Rapture. Tennis events became sponsored by the telekinesis plasmid. Dentist offices advertised a free plasmid sample with a root canal. Products like Fresh Hair, Sports Boost and Instant Piano Prodigy offered citizens an easy way to a full head of hair, physical fitness or musical genius. The extremely addictive nature of Adam soon led to it becoming vital for Rapture's continued function. Everybody wanted it. Everybody needed it. As an increasing number of negative side effects resulting from Adam's usage became clear, Ryan refused to interfere, as his philosophy put responsibility on the individual and not a government. To do so, he believed, would be a betrayal of his free market ideology, and the individual's freedom Rapture was founded upon, believing that the great chain of society would correct the issue. As the addiction began to worsen, the demand for Adam skyrocketed far beyond what Rapture could produce, and soon withdrawal symptoms began driving Adam users insane, turning them into rabidly Adam-addicted splicers, driving them to start attacking and killing anyone nearby in hopes of acquiring more of the substance. With the Thinker in full use, and now able to think for itself, Charles Milton Porter begins to input data about his deceased wife Pearl, who had died years before, in a way to help with his grieving. While conducting an investigation of missing ships and submarines, a diver accidentally discovers Rapture and is welcomed into the city, becoming known as Johnny Topside. Eventually, Ryan finally understood the threat to his city that Fontaine posed. marking him as someone to be watched. He realised that he had missed the boat on the Adam market and began to investigate Fontaine's businesses, using his security team to expose his criminal activities and his crew of smugglers, as he believed that the greatest threat to the city was the city's existence being exposed to the surface, as the smuggling ring brought in items from the surface, creating risk. Standard persuasion proved fruitless, as Fontaine often coerced and even murdered any witnesses who considered revealing his crimes. Ryan's men eventually turned to torture to gain the information Ryan needed to prove that Fontaine was a traitor to Rapture. He then ordered that those convicted of smuggling would be subject to capital punishment, increasingly relying upon force to ensure his control of Rapture. Aware of how Charles had been using the Thinker, Reed Wall accused him of misusing and wasting the technology, which he believed had the potential to tell the future through equations and algorithms. Now wanting the Thinker to himself, Wall used the Thinker to forge Charles's voice, pledging loyalty to Fontaine. With this evidence, Ryan has Porter incarcerated in Persephone, a secret facility created by Augustus Sinclair, and puts Wall in charge of the Thinker. Ryan did not trust Johnny Topside's story of his accidental discovery of Rapture, and was convinced that he must be a government agent sent to spy on Rapture. Ryan quickly had him incarcerated at the Persephone penal colony. Thus, he effectively disappeared from the public eye and was put in with other exiled citizens who had worked against Ryan's philosophy or posed a threat to Rapture. In 1956, Ryan's mistress, Jasmine Jolene, became pregnant and feared telling him. Using Brigid Tenebaum as an intermediary, Fontaine offered to pay Jolene a large sum of money in exchange for the fetus of her unborn child. Jasmine accepted the offer, seeing it as her only chance to gain financial independence. As Ryan carried out his war on smuggling, Fontaine fought Ryan on a different front with what he called the charity angle. He created Fontaine's Home for the Poor, for those who had fallen on hard times. People in these poor houses were then used to test combat-based plasmids that Fontaine Futuristics was starting to develop. Ryan noticed Lamb's growing influence with the citizens of Rapture and began to regret bringing her in. Her ideology of altruism largely clashed with his own, and Ryan saw her as a corrupting influence in his paradise. He agreed to a series of public debates, hoping to diffuse Sophia's support by showing the flaws in her reasoning. These debates did not have the effect that Ryan hoped. Inside the Fontaine Futuristics, the unborn child of Jasmine Jolene is artificially grown by a team including Dr. Suchong and Brigid Tenebaum. By the age of 1, Jack weighed 58 pounds and had the gross musculature of a fit 19-year-old. Suchong monitored Jack's rapid development and implanted him with 2 known mind control triggers: Would You Kindly, which caused Jack to obey unquestionably, and Code Yellow, which, when activated, would ultimately stop Jack's heart. Peach Wilkins, one of Fontaine's smugglers, agreed to cut a deal and flip Fontaine due to Ryan's war on the smuggling ring. Now, Ryan and his security team had valid grounds to arrest Fontaine. Upon finding this out, Fontaine decided that he was going to make one last stand and go down guns blazing, rather than allow himself to be arrested. In preparation for the conflict soon to come, Fontaine handed out combat plasmids to his followers and employees. Eventually, Lamb's ideologies became so much of a threat to Ryan that he resorted to less ethical means to have her brought down. He used Augustus Sinclair's company, Sinclair Solutions, to spy in Sophia Lamb's inner circle by paying Stanley Poole to infiltrate the family. While in the family, Stanley was under intense pressure from Ryan's operatives, and from young Eleanor Lamb, who became suspicious of him. Stanley anonymously reported Sophia Lamb's plots to take control of Rapture, resulting in her detention at Persephone along with her followers. Now ready, Fontaine has Jack, a fully grown man, smuggled out of Rapture in a bathysphere and sent to the surface as a sleeper agent, living out his pre-programmed life as Jack Wynard until needed. His secret weapon, his ace in the hole. After Lamb's disappearance, Stanley Poole used his new privileges to throw wild parties at Lamb's expense. When Eleanor threatened Stanley with telling her mother what he was doing, Stanley kidnapped and sold her to a little sister's orphanage. On September 12, 1958, Ryan ordered for Fontaine's arrest at Fontaine Fisheries. Fontaine resisted, resulting in a major firefight, in which Fontaine faked his own death. Over the next 2 months, the supporters of Fontaine who survived the shootout and those who had held allegiance to him were tracked down and arrested. Dr. Suchong was given a choice by Ryan to either be locked up with them or to earn a large salary by working for him permanently. Naturally, Suchong chose the latter option, while Brigid Tenebaum went into hiding. With Fontaine presumed dead, he created and became the persona of a revolutionary named Atlas, protesting and rallying supporters against Ryan's philosophy in his running of Rapture. Although Ryan had built Rapture to escape the big government that could take over private industry, Ryan was forced to engage in precisely the same behaviour, taking over Fontaine Futuristics. This move shocked Rapture to its core. Atlas protested against him in front of citizens, building support against Ryan. Atlas's followers gathered weapons, ammunition and plasmids to arm themselves, ready for a war. This did not go unnoticed by Ryan, who had Atlas and some of his close followers sent to Fontaine's department store, which had been converted into a makeshift prison. This prison also provided Ryan with a place to lock up splicers who had become too insane to be allowed in public, under the guise that they were working for Fontaine. With Fontaine's little sister orphanages closed, an orphan called Sally was left wandering in the streets of Rapture, and later adopted by Booker DeWitt. In an attempt to at least partially mitigate the Adam problem, Dr. Suchong psychologically adapted the Little Sisters to extract residual Adam from the dead bodies from splicer attacks around Rapture, which could then be recycled back into usable plasmids for sale. The extraction of Adam, however, made the Little Sisters targets for the splicers, and as such, the Protector program was initiated. Dr. Gil Alexander started to engineer a bond between Protectors and the Little Sisters. The Protectors endured strenuous genetic and psychological conditioning, losing much of their free will. The subjects for this program being exiled criminals, the criminally insane, and political dissidents imprisoned in Persephone. The aim of the bond to mimic the emotional bond between the father and his daughter. He called this the pair bond. The theory that Protectors, also commonly called Big Daddies, would guard their little sister and not wander away from the girls, otherwise they would slip into a coma. Sander Cohen, an artist and friend of Ryan, began trafficking young girls to various individuals willing to pay the right price. The majority were bought by Ryan Industries to be turned into Little Sisters. After many unsuccessful attempts, the first candidate from the Protector program to be successfully pair bonded is Subject Delta, previously known as Johnny Topside. His little sister, Eleanor Lamb, who had fallen into the hands of Dr. Gil Alexander, unaware of who her mother was when she was turned into the little sister. As Sinclair rented out inmates at Persephone to Ryan Industries, Charles Milton Porter became the 18th Alpha Series Big Daddy, Subject Sigma, in the Protector program. In a short time, the Alpha Series failed to be practical, as the Protectors only protected a specific little sister. If their little sister were lost to splicers or rescued by Dr. Brigid Tenebaum, it rendered the Protectors useless, sending them into a coma or making them suicidally aggressive. Even after being reprogrammed, they were only usable as mere foot soldiers. With the unsuccessful results, Dr. Gilbert gave up while Suchong continued to look for a solution. The unbonded Alpha Series were then deactivated and put into cold storage, never bonded to a little sister, one of them being Subject Sigma. Living in Rapture, Booker DeWitt had become an alcoholic and gambler. One day, while at the tables, his adopted daughter, Sally, is kidnapped and later turned into a little sister. After searching for her, he is later told that her body had been found. Believing the lie, he gave up on his search. In Fontaine's department store, a tear opens and Elizabeth steps out, her aim to search for the last remaining Comstock in all realities, intent on punishing and killing him for the beheading of the alternate baby Anna. Due to her arrival, the owners reported the tear and control of the restaurant was handed over to Dr. Suchong. Discovering the tears, Suchong discovers that Jeremiah Fink, from another universe, has been using tears to steal Rapture's technological advancements and has been passing them off as his own in his own reality. Soon, he discovers that Fink is also working on a similar pairing bond, and so, They begin sharing research in an attempt to create it. After Elizabeth's accidental bonding with Songbird, Fink puts an end to their working relationship, making Suchong bitter with the aim to steal a DNA sample from the girl that had been imprinted. After the department store has been prepared with security devices and full of undesirables, Ryan has it separated from the city and sunk to the bottom of an ocean trench, putting a hold on Suchong's research on the pairing bond. With the apparent death of Fontaine and Ryan's actions afterwards, Rapture's population began to question exactly how much power Andrew Ryan should have. Adding to the tension was the increasing number of unexplained disappearances of young girls in the city. The end of such a turbulent year may have caused some who sensed the deteriorating state of civil society to breathe a sigh of relief. But peace would be short-lived for the people of Rapture, and soon, a much larger scale conflict would come. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the second episode of the Bioshock timeline. This one took a while, about 4 months. There will be one more part. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the new guys that have subscribed, the people donating in live streams and my patrons. Everything helps so much. We also have a great Discord community linked below. If you like this, please subscribe, like and share. It really does help a lot. I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy your day. Bye.